Hi, I'm Zara and welcome to my channel. I post every Monday and Friday. And before I get into this video, I would like to apologize for the background. This video is about my life story though, and this is part of it. I am currently in the process of moving. Creating videos in the future, I do plan on making them about mental health, beauty, and wellness, and energy releasing through natural forms. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned for future videos. Before I start this video, I would like to put a disclaimer that I'm going to try to keep every single person I talk about in this video confidential, so the names will be replaced with other names or initials. So with all that being said, let's get into the story. So in 2002, I was born in Park Rapids, Minnesota with two older brothers. One was 2 years older than me and the other was 4 years older than me. The one that's 2 years older we will call S, and the one that's 4 years older we will call D. So 2003 to 2005, I was 2 to 4 years old. My family lived in the Itasca State apartments with my dad's childhood best friend, and I and my brothers became friends with her children very quickly. So flash forward into 2006, I was 4 to 5. We moved into a house that I would consider cursed or haunted, which I will get into more in a later video. We moved to Moorhead, Minnesota, and from my window, I could see the police station, the elementary school, and the preschool, all in like the same area. When I was going to preschool, my dad, he would walk me to school, but then when I started going to elementary, my brothers would walk me to school. Flash forward to 2007, I was 5 to 6 years old. By this time I had begun first grade, and I had become best friends with this girl who we'll call Elle. She did not have a very good life growing up. Her parents were very all over the place and very heavy drug users, but that is not my story or my place to tell. But when I was younger, it was very hard on me having a friend like that, just because she was constantly moving all around. She also knew of a lot of things that most 6-year-olds would not know about. Like, she was very familiar with like sexuality and kind of like body shaming and stuff, which I think a lot of that happened to her when she was younger, but she used to do the same things to me. Going into 2008, I was 6 to 7. It was a very hard time for me. I was beginning 2nd grade. This is kind of the beginning of where my family started to go downhill. But my dad, he was a few blocks down and he was sandbagging because we live next to a river and it had been flooding recently. And then my mom, she was in the kitchen. My brother, he was outside attending our grill. My other brother S, he was in the living room watching TV, and I was upstairs in my parents' bedroom playing on my mom's phone. So my brother, he is, like I said, he was attending the grill, and my brother went to go pour lighter fluid on it. This was D. And when he went to go pour the lighter fluid on it, there was a little flame, but he didn't see it. So he went inside and he told my mom, "Hey, the grill isn't starting up, can I pour gasoline on it?" My mom said, "Well, if there isn't a flame, I don't see why not." So my brother went to the garage and he got the gas can and went back to attending the grill. When he went back to the grill, he went to go pour the gasoline on it, and before the like actual liquid gas could touch the grill, the gas tank exploded in my brother's hands from the fumes, sending gasoline spraying all over his body. Immediately he tries to stop, drop, and roll. Next door, my dad's friend, he was one of our neighbors, and he seen what was going on, so he hopped the fence, but unfortunately he happened to be heavier set, so after he hopped the fence, he immediately had a heart attack from all the adrenaline and everything and died right there on our lawn. So while all that was happening, my brother stopped, dropping, and rolling, and then he comes running inside, and by this time, everyone has heard the explosion. Somebody talks to my dad and they're like, "Hey, your house is on fire," because my brother is running inside. And the second that my dad sees our house, he comes sprinting down the yard to our house, you know. So my mom, I hear her scream and I come bolting downstairs thinking she's excited, like, what's going on, you know, as like the 7-year-old I am. And so my mom was standing there in complete shock while my brother was ripping his shirt off in flames, and my other brother was standing there in complete shock, like, you know, what is going on? Why is my brother combusted into flames? By the time my brother ripped his shirt off, he was trying to reach for the kitchen hose sink, and my dad, he came running inside, and my brother began spraying his body with the kitchen hose sink. With the kitchen sink hose. And after he got done spraying himself down, my dad, he's like, "Sorry, go turn on the shower on the coldest setting you possibly can." And I go and I turn on the shower. Well, it took the police half an hour to get to our house. Yes, they were here and our house was here, and it took them 30 minutes to get there. By the time the police got there, my brother and my parents had already been on an ambulance on their way, getting transported to a burn unit in Minneapolis. And me and my older brother S, we were sitting there waiting for my grandma, who was 2 hours away. She came and got us, and she took us back to where she was at, which was in Park Rapids, which was 6 hours away from where my family was at. So me and my brother S ended up going to school in Park Rapids for like 6 months, waiting for my brother to heal. So some time goes by, and my brother, he's completely healed. So that brings us into 2009 to 2011. I was 8 to 9. I felt like growing up, I was a very relatively normal child. I was discovering myself, discovering things that I liked. I wasn't very good with school. I have dyslexia, so school was always very, very, very hard for me, and I just like couldn't get down with it. So that brings us into 2012. I was 10 years old, and this is kind of when my life started to really change, which in future videos I can get into more detail about this, but I'm trying to keep this like very sweet and short. But my parents ended up getting divorced on March 27th, 2012, my birthday. It was a very drastic change. One day my mom was there and one day she wasn't. And so me and my dad were kind of the only two that were left in our house, because my brothers happened to leave with my mom, and our house was being foreclosed. So immediately I had to find another way out. My dad was kind of like hopeless and helpless at this point. He was so depressed and felt like he had lost everything, and I was like the only thing he had left to his name besides the clothes on his back. So I contact my dad's friend's daughter, and I tell her what's going on, and she talks to her mom, and we kind of organize plans to get me and my dad to move out where they're at, which is in Pelican Rapids. And so me and my dad, we pack our bags and we end up moving into their house, not knowing, including us, that there would be 12 people in that household. So we're all in that house, and I went to school there for a good year. I still wasn't doing very good in school. My life still wasn't really the best, especially like after everything that happened. Everything was so dramatic. I didn't really have anyone there to like help me cope it and get through everything. That brings us into 2013. I was 10 to 11. It was the summertime, and my dad's friend had just left her fiance because he was cheating on her. So me, my dad, and her 4 kids, we all packed up our bags and we went and we lived in the middle of the woods. Me and my dad had nothing to our names except for our clothes and maybe a few dollars. But other than that, our only way of transportation or anything was through the luck of his friend. So me and my dad were living out in the woods until about winter came. It was right before it was gonna snow, and my mom, she found out what was going on. So she drove down to Pelican Rapids and she came and got me, and kind of saved me from that whole ordeal. So that brings us into 2014. I was 11 to 12. My dad had moved to Moorhead, and he was living with one of his friends, but they ended up dating. And I was going to a jank-ass school called Horizon Middle School, where I started to become just like really depressed and just had a lot of anxiety. I was being bullied. Just like everything wasn't that great, you know. The person that my dad was with, we will call her C, and I happened to be able to go between my parents a lot and very easily because like my mom was here and my dad was like 2 blocks down over here. So whenever I wanted to just hop up and go, I could hop up and go. So I went and I stayed with my dad for a while, but C was kind of motivating his drinking habits, and he started getting really bad, and she also started getting really bad. I ended up leaving my dad's and I went to my mom's, and That brings us into 2015. I was 12 to 13, just beginning 7th grade. This was also kind of a really hard year for me. My depression was getting really bad, and my parents didn't really know what to do with me anymore. And I was staying with my mom, like I said. She kind of lost all hope, in all honesty, and she sent me to a mental hospital. And I stayed there for about 3 months, and then shortly after I got out of the mental hospital, I was being bullied really bad for quite a while. And then one day, me and my mom got into an argument, and in all honesty, I couldn't even tell you to this day like what it was about. But she ended up calling the police and got locked up for 3 months. So while I was locked up, me and my mom, we were rebuilding and replenishing our relationship and making plans to move to Colorado. So after those 3 months passed, that brings us into 2016. I was 13 to 14, and I was just beginning 8th grade. We had finally moved to Colorado right in the beginning of the new school year. It was a new place, a new time, new people, so I wasn't really worried about anything. And in all honesty, the entire time I was there was probably like one of the best chapters of my life, just because like there was so many new opportunities and new places and new people. It was just like a really good chapter for me. But all good things come to an end, and me and my mom, we ended up moving back to the Fargo-Moorhead about 6 months later. I was going to a new school, so I didn't really know anyone, but it was still kind of dreadful for me to like move back to the same area where like all these horrible things had happened in my past. But after going to school for a while, I ended up meeting this girl who we'll call KM. And me and her were friends until like the middle of freshman year. So then that brings us into freshman year for me. I would just like to put a side note: if you are sensitive to sexual content or anything that has to do with like rape or molestation, please skip ahead until a safer part. I will definitely try to put in a timestamp, but if I can't, please skip ahead. I would hate to trigger anybody. Like I said, it was the beginning of freshman year, and I was just starting to grow into my body, and I knew that I looked cute, you know. And me and this boy started talking, but not in person yet. He wanted to meet up with me, and as a 14-year-old, I'm not thinking like bad things are going to happen, so I didn't really see the problem with it. So me and him, we ended up meeting up at my place because he had some friends that lived in my area, and we ended up walking back to his place, which was like a few roads down. Me and him were walking back. We had like just a crazy conversation that, in all honesty, I'll probably never forget about. But we end up going to his place, and we're not in an apartment. We're walking down how like the garages are next to the apartments. We're walking down one of those, and we stop at a garage door, and he's like, "This is my place." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." You know, like I'm not really thinking anything of it. I have friends that stay in garages. He opens up the garage door, and what I'm expecting is like lights, a couch, you know, for it to be like a cute, fun little setup, because I had a lot of friends that had areas like that, so it wasn't weird to me that we were at a garage. So he, like I said, he opened up the garage door, and I step in, and when I go inside, it's just dark. It's completely dark. The only thing that's inside of there is a red minivan and a mattress that is put up against it. He flips the mattress over so it's laying flat on the ground, and he closes the garage door behind us, and he locks it. And I'm not thinking like, oh, bad shit's about to happen. Like, I'm like, okay, I guess it's a different type of setup, you know, whatever. Everyone's got their own problems. I don't know what the fuck's going on in this dude's life. He throws me down on the mattress, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I've had abusive boyfriends, so it wasn't anything new to me. I kind of expected it. And after he throws me on the mattress, he starts kissing me and stuff, and then he takes off my shirt, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go too far, you know, all I'm thinking is foreplay. So I let him take off my shirt, and then he rips my pants off my body. Like, I swear my skin was coming off with my pants. And he rips them off of my body, and, you know, now I'm like, whoa, okay, this is getting way too far. So I tell him, like, hey, can we stop? Can we stop? And he's like, no, don't worry about it, it's fine, you know. So I'm like, oh, okay. And he rips off my underwear, and I'm like, wow, this is about to get really bad. And I already know it, I can feel it, it's about to get bad. And he takes off my bra, and I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, please, can we please stop? And like my eyes are starting to tear up, I'm starting to choke. I'm like, please, can we just please stop? And he's like, don't worry about it. And he throws me back down onto the mattress and flips me over, and he pushes my face into the mattress to the point to where I couldn't even breathe anymore. After he penetrated me, I tried to flip over, and I was on my back, and I tried pushing him off with my legs, and he ripped my legs open and continued to penetrate me. I'm not going to get into further detail after that, just because I don't need things to be so explicit. After he was done doing what he did, he threw my clothes at me and he told me to get dressed, and I got dressed, and after I did, he unlocked the garage door and he opened it. With every single ounce in my body, I just wanted to sprint. He opens the garage door and I start to walk out, and I'm walking away from him, and he grabs me by my arm and he's like, hey. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, don't tell anybody about this, okay? And I was like, okay, all right. So I sat on it for a week, and I ended up calling my best friend at the time, KM, and I told her everything that had happened, and immediately her and her family came and they picked me up and they brought me to the police station to report it. After I reported this incident, my life just started to drastically change in a downward spiral. My depression came flooding over me. Every single person at school knew, because the police were constantly there questioning me. The person that had raped me also went to my school and was telling everyone whatever I was saying, I was lying. So kids that I didn't even know would come up to me and tell me I was a whore or a liar or a slut, and it was just everywhere and anywhere that I went. As time went on, my depression began to get even worse and worse. I started cutting really bad, just becoming very suicidal. There were multiple times where I attempted suicide through overdoses or trying to just blast my head off in the gun jamming. So after a while, my mom kind of realized how out of control I was getting, and so one day she asked me for my phone, and I didn't see any reason to give her my phone, which was probably my fault on this. My mom began wrestling me and choking me out, and we fell into the shelf, and the shelf fell against the wall, and then I ended up falling in through the wall, so there was a me-shaped hole in the wall. My mom ended up calling the police because I bit her arm to get her off of me, and immediately the police handcuffed me. Don't even question what happened. They're just no, you're wrong. So then I got locked up for 3 months, and when I got out, I was on probation for 2 years. While I was going on probation, I was going to some special school, and then I was also going to drug counseling, which I've only smoked weed. That brings us into 2017. I was 15 to 16 years old. This year was completely life-changing for me. One day I was hanging out with this girl, and she was telling me about this guy that she was messing around with. She was just telling me everything about him, and I told her right off the bat I would rock his shit, But after me and him met, me and him kind of instantly clicked. We had very similar lives growing up, and immediately him and his family wanted to help me after I explained to him everything that had happened in my life and my life story. I ended up moving in with my dad. Well, shortly after I moved in with my dad ended up getting evicted, so Cameron's family told my family that we can move in with them. So me, my brother, and my dad all packed up our shit, and we ended up moving in with Cameron's family. Well, after a while, my dad wasn't really agreeing that me and Cameron were dating, so my dad called the police and he got me taken out of the home. When my dad got me taken out, me and my dad brought our stuff over to his friend's house, where I was staying in a closet for a while, and after that, I started reporting the things that my dad was doing and standing up for myself, and after I reported him, my dad ended up picking me up and we moved out to Enderlin. When we moved out to Enderlin, Cameron was able to visit out there maybe once a week, or once or twice a week. So he would come out there, and each time that he was out there was the only time I was able to eat. And me and him kind of were watching everything that was going on, but one of the people that me and my dad were staying with, they ended up hitting me, and after they hit me, we immediately called the police. Cameron's family came and picked me up, and I've been living in their home ever since. The moment that I entered into their family's life and they heard about the life that I had lived, they were instantly trying to show me what family means, what love means, celebrating holidays, and it was completely life-changing for me. Shortly after I ended up moving back, I ended up becoming pregnant at 16, and I got an abortion about 10 weeks later just because I was so young and I didn't think it was time. I also had so much like trauma that I had to work through that it would not have been a good scenario for that child, and I knew that I would not be able to provide them with the best life possible. Which means that brings us into 2018 through 2020. The past few years have been some of the best years of my life. I've definitely discovered who I am. I've figured out how to deal with my bipolar disorder, which is why I was lashing out so much when I was younger. And just kind of got over the trauma of my past. I'm starting to work towards my GED. I want to be a cosmetologist when I grow up. So life has been very, very long and strategic for me, but it's been a battle that I would definitely go through again. I appreciate every single person that has come into my life, especially Cameron's family, and even the people that fucked things up for me. Like, I appreciated them in the moments that I had them. But thank you so much for attending this video, and thank you so much for staying and listening and watching and caring about what I have to say. I actually really do appreciate that. Like I said, if you would like to stay in tune for future videos, that I will be posting them every single Friday and Monday. But I hope you guys enjoy and you stay in tune for more. Bye, and have an amazing day.